everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Divorce and Separation Coach podcast. Today, we're talking about new relationships after divorce, and especially how to avoid making the same mistakes that you made with your previous partner. I think we've all had that concern. How do you make sure that the next relationship doesn't end the way the first one did? So, to talk about this, I've invited Mila Smith. Mila knows that love doesn't come with a manual. And so she's developed a step-by-step coaching program that reveals the secret you need to know. She's been trained by one of the world's leading relationship experts, and she uses proven science as well as research-based methods to build a happy, healthy relationship, no matter how many times it hasn't worked out in the past. Mila, it's great to have you. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Chloe. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
It's great to
Mm.
have you. I'm really looking forward to all the advice you can share. I've been in that seat myself after my divorce, and I know that a lot of people do worry about
Yeah,
replicating mistakes. Is there any advice you can start with, maybe around identifying patterns? So, looking back at past relationships to see what you can avoid doing going forward.
absolutely. And I'm very familiar with with this situation myself. One of the first things I do with clients is exactly that, looking at the past relationship patterns. And
Yeah.
if we have more than one and more than two, that's great. The more information I have, the better.
Mhm.
So we complete table, and I look in great detail at all the aspects, including how the relationship started,
Mhm.
what they liked about their partners first, what they didn't like about their partners, and how the relationship developed.
Yeah.
How it ended is also obviously a very important criteria.
Yeah.
Now, some people deny having any patterns at all, but I've discovered that people usually do.
Okay.
And the most common pattern probably is falling into relationships blindly
Mm.
without thinking, are we right for each other?
Okay. So, just following their heart, basically.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
I know it's a very popular saying, a cliche, follow your heart, not your
Yeah.
head. But I actually beg to differ, because you also need to have the green light from your head.
Yes.
So in this situation, the heart, I think the reference is more to our emotional state and the hormones. And as you know, we're largely driven by our hormones and the chemicals in our brain and in our body in the early phases of the relationship.
Yeah.
So it's all good and well, but it's not the best time to be making any life-changing decisions.
Yeah.
And we will talk about it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it's interesting looking back at patterns because
Mm,
it can work both ways. Some people replicate the same pattern over and over again.
mm,
And then you've got people who look for the exact opposite in their next partner, thinking,
mm,
I'm going to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
mm,
So,
mm.
if my previous partner was very sure of themselves and very outgoing, I'm going to look for an introvert and someone who's very shy.
Mm.
What's the value of that as well? Is that a good technique or good strategy?
Not particularly. It's quite normal for people to replicate, to default to the same pattern time and again, because it's our brain's safety mechanism, if you
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
which protects us in stressful situation when we're faced with something new, such as a
Yeah.
new partner, new relationship. Our brain is trying to protect us, and we fall into our old habits and repeat the same patterns. But we
Yeah.
know the dangers of that. If that didn't work the first time round, it's unlikely to work again.
Yeah.
Um, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and
Yes.
expecting a different result. On the other hand, if there were certain qualities you did not like in your previous partner, um, yes, it's also quite common for people to to look for someone who's exactly the opposite, but
Yeah.
it doesn't give you a full picture.
Yeah.
Yes, those individual qualities, um, uh, it's a valid point trying to find someone different. Um, but we have to take a holistic approach. And actually, now we're coming probably to the most important point. So, how do you differentiate? How do you know what is important and
Yeah.
what is not going to work in the relationship?
Ah, the big question.
Yes. Uh, so I'd like to explain that all the findings I'm going to share are based 100% on extensive research and science. So, in a study which spanned over 30 years,
Hmm.
the information was collected from hundreds and even thousands of couples and individuals
Yeah.
over the course of time, over the course of 30 years. So, it won't be surprise to you when I say that approximately 50% split.
Yeah.
They got
That's about
divorced.
aligned
Yeah,
to
yeah.
divorce
That's
statistics. Yeah.
yes. In the Western world, that's about the proportion. Just just over 50% stayed together.
Okay.
And with extensive research and interviewing these couples every year on a number of topics,
Yeah.
we now have the data and we can say with confidence which what do they have in common, those couples
Hmm.
who stayed together and
Yeah.
couples who didn't. And the main um, the main area which ensures, which I can't say guaranteed because nothing is ever guaranteed,
Yes.
but the main predictor of a relationship success over a long term, over the course of time, is sharing key life values.
Ah, that makes sense actually.
Yes, yes, when you think about it. So when I say key life values, it does not mean hobbies, interests, or having something in common.
Yeah.
It's a completely different sphere.
Hmm.
So interests and hobbies such as music, food, doing something together. It's nice when you do have an activity in which you can engage together as a couple,
Yeah.
but it's also okay to have completely different tastes in music, food, fashion, and many other aspects. It predicts nothing about the relationship success
Yeah.
in the long run. In fact, it's beneficial to have some different hobbies and interests because it brings a spark back into a relationship.
Oh,
Uh,
I like
yeah, so here's an example. For example, my husband plays golf, and although he invited me to join a few times, I rejected because it's good for him to have that to
yeah.
himself with his friends, and we do a lot of other things together. I, on the other hand, also uh, try to carve some time out for myself
Hmm.
where I'm not part of a couple 100% of the time. So
Yeah.
what it does to a relationship when we meet, we share
Mhm.
something new, and instead of being boring and ho hum and we know everything about each other,
Yeah.
we're talking about some new experiences, and that adds excitement to a relationship because it reminds you how things were when you met,
True.
when everything was
Yeah.
new and exciting. So I'm slightly off topic, but I just wanted to explain the difference and the significance of sharing interests or not
Yes.
sharing interests and the key life values. So, back to the point, the key life values are the fundamental beliefs and views uh, which you have, which actually
Hmm.
make you you as a
Yes.
person. And the reason it's important to share, to be aligned on these key life values with your significant other, first of all, they confirm your view of the world, they
Mhm.
validate your
That's true.
opinion, which is good. So
Mhm.
we get on. Secondly, there will be less unresolved conflict in
Mhm.
a relationship. There's always some conflict, and we will talk about it separately. But clashing on key life values creates unresolved, lingering conflict,
Mm.
which is not good.
Yeah.
And finally, when we meet a person and we discover more about them, we see that we share these key life values. We then we think that they will like us, and that will make us like them more. It's a little
Yeah.
bit confusing, but it's a reciprocal pattern in psychology. We like people who we think like us, and vice
Yes.
versa.
Makes sense.
So it's another method to strengthen the bond between two people.
But so
So
how do
mhm,
you validate that, especially at the start of a relationship when you don't
mm,
know the other person that well? You don't
mm.
always have an early insight into their values.
Um, no, of course not. But in my program, I dedicate a lot of time to uncovering these life values for
Ah,
every individual, and then once we've written them down and assessed them, we then think of different ways on how to build them into a conversation
okay.
with your potential dates, and I will cover them very briefly. But one of these key life values is money, and everything to
Hmm.
do with money, because
Yeah,
as you know, I'm sure it's a huge source of conflict in
it can be,
relationships.
absolutely.
Yeah. So anything to do with how you spend money, are you a spender, or do you like saving? The second one is family. A
Yes.
family, not just in the sense of our children, but also our extended family,
Hmm.
siblings, and how much time we like spending with them, or maybe we don't.
Hmm.
And as long as these values are aligned, it makes
Yeah.
life much easier for a couple. The third category is everything to do with health and fitness,
Okay.
including in the recent years, vaccinations have become a
Oh,
huge
yes.
topic. And I know some people get very, very defensive, and
Hmm.
uh, so this is something to consider.
Yeah.
Um, Another category is career and work.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
people are married to their job, and some people simply see work as a means to an end, as
Yeah.
something to exist, to make money. So they live to work, work to live, and not the other way around. And in the recent years, there's been a rise in social justice question, and
Mm.
even politics, I would
I was
say.
going to mention
Um,
politics. Yeah.
yes. So this is one of the categories, our key life values. Um, w- we we think very passionately,
Hmm.
usually about this area. So, how do you feel about again race, gender, the more recent values of diversity and
Yeah.
inclusion, um, politics, uh, which I think sometimes divides people and divides
Yeah.
the society. So when you have that divide in your relationship, in your home, it adds complexity
Yeah.
and stress to an already complex life.
That's true.
So we spent a lot of time talking about these aspects, and again, in the end, once you've identified your beliefs, your views of the world, it's not that difficult to weave them into a conversation
Okay.
and touch on a topic, to start a discussion with your dates at some point.
Hmm.
So it doesn't sound like an interview,
Yes.
but um, rather sharing.
Now that
Yes.
makes a lot of
So,
sense. But
mm,
I'm
mm.
thinking, throughout all of these
Mm.
relationships that we experience in our life, the common denominator is us. So the person who is having all these relationships. And so, there's certainly a role that we play, no matter who we choose
Always.
as a partner. And
Mm.
so, how do you help people to identify, I guess, or to take accountability and to identify some of the things that they do or contribute to a relationship and potentially to the relationship's failure?
Mm. Um, it always takes two to tango. Um, that is absolutely true. And I have to be a little careful here because sometimes people come to me in a lot of pain.
Mm,
And it's possible that some of your listeners are still feeling very raw about the
yeah.
relationship breakdown, especially if their partner left them. Um, so when I work with clients with heavy emotional baggage, first of all, I focus on getting them to the point
Hmm.
where they don't feel much of anything for their ex,
Hmm.
love or hate,
Okay,
at a
that's good.
more neutral place.
Yeah.
And there's a number of strategies in psychology to do that. And one of them, which is very helpful, is high energy exercise,
Okay.
creative activities,
Hmm.
getting things off your chest and writing a letter to your
Journaling, yeah.
ex,
Hmm.
but not sending it. It's
That's the
writing
key.
it for you. Yes.
Yeah.
So I usually advise, if possible, to do a handwritten letter,
Hmm.
because that way you're not going to send it to them in the heat of a moment when you're feeling
True.
sad or had too much to drink. So
It's not just a click
definitely,
away.
no, no. So
Yeah.
definitely not an email, not a text, because you send it and that opens up, another
Yeah.
cycle of negativity, most probably.
Hmm.
No, I advise to write something for you to get things off your chest and to explain how your partner hurt you and how it affected your life, and then leave it
Yeah.
and get on with life for a week, maybe for a couple of weeks. And then you write another one
Hmm.
and another one. And over time, it takes different people different amount of time, but over time you go back to the early letters and you see, oh my God, I'm moving on. So
Yes.
the feelings will inevitably dissipate.
That's
So
interesting
this
because I give exactly that advice in
Mm.
my book, and I did it
Ah, good,
myself.
good,
That's
good.
that's where it
Yeah.
came from,
Mm,
and I
mm,
found it incredibly cathartic to just get things out on paper, because sometimes you just feel like you don't have an opportunity to say everything that you've got on your chest, and it doesn't matter if no one
mm.
hears it. Just getting it out is really, really helpful.
Absolutely. So you hit the nail on the head there. It's really cathartic and it helps the healing process. So it's absolutely not for the discussion with your ex, because if you send it to them, you will be expecting a reply, and then there you go again.
Yeah.
So another technique to try and neutralize the situation
Mhm.
is to take that personal aspect out of the situation, instead of blaming either yourself or your partner for the relationship demise.
Yeah.
Blame the relationship. So
Oh.
it wasn't his or her fault. It was the relationship. We were too young.
Hmm.
We didn't know what we wanted. We wanted different things.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. So as soon as you introduce that third party, that neutral, abstract concept such as relationship, it's very difficult to remain angry or
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
So regular affirmations and repeating this will help you in the end to come to that neutral place where
Hmm.
you don't feel much of anything for your ex.
Yeah.
And this is when we are ready, we're a step closer to a new relationship, and we're now in a place to see things objectively.
Yeah.
And to see things objectively, of course, we always have to take a look in the mirror. And personally, I was very harsh with myself.
Mm.
when I when I did that exercise. And I thought, you know what, you saw most of the red flags,
Yeah,
but you chose to hear what you wanted to hear
which is very
because
common.
it is very common. It felt really good in the moment. And
Yeah,
again, we decide to follow our heart and we think, okay, well, love conquers all. And I just persevered.
yeah.
And then I spent years in futile attempts to change my partner, to get him to fit the mold that I wanted. And in the end, I had to say, if you make these decisions, there are always consequences.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
consequences for these decisions. So I'm a very harsh critic of myself. So I would I probably would be I would be more gentle with a client, and I would say, well, look, let's see what signs you saw early on and chose to ignore, or maybe you didn't realize. If you're young, you don't realize the consequences, potential
Yes,
consequences of those. And also in a relationship, men and women are very different species.
yes.
And I find, in my experience, that a lot of conflict in relationships is down to the fact that women expect men to think and feel like us,
Mm.
and men also don't fully understand thinking and the emotional process of a woman, or don't acknowledge it. So we treat each other like we are the same. So we expect men to say things and do things the way we envisage them.
Yes.
And this is never going to happen.
Yeah.
We
And
are
and it
very.
kind of it kind of boils down to this idea of the love language. And
Mm,
we have a tendency of showing love in a way that we want to be shown
yeah.
love. But
Mm,
actually, if for us, and, it could be for me, it's words of affection. So when I love somebody,
mm,
I say lots of nice things to them. And so that's what I want to hear. And that's
mm,
what gives me that sense. But for the other person, it might be that giving gifts, for example, is
mm,
their way of showing love. And that's where that disconnect happens, where we both think we're showing
mm.
love to each other, but we're not receiving it as such.
Correct, correct. So we when we are with someone over time, we discover what they prefer, whether it's compliments or act of service. For men, usually it's more behavior and act of service.
Hmm.
Uh, Women uh, typically it's affirmations and compliments and gifts.
Yeah,
But then it depends really.
yeah.
The different people have different preferences. Uh, what I can say for sure, and this is again rooted in long-term research, which I referred to earlier, um, men do need compliments.
Ah, interesting.
Uh, yes, very
Yeah,
much so. And the reason being, women get more compliments when we are with friends or
yeah,
even going to the hairdressers, or sometimes a stranger comes up to us and they say, "Oh, this is a lovely dress,"
yeah.
or your hair looks gorgeous. I like your perfume. All these small affirmations and compliments. Men don't get any of that because
That's true.
um, my husband's friend is never going to say, "Oh, mate, you look lovely. That shirt really suits you."
Yeah.
Say, "Are you mad?" So men don't get complimented as much as we do, but they still need it. They need
Yeah, of course.
a little bit. So if you want to enhance your relationship to make it great, not just good,
Hmm.
um, pay compliments to your men.
That's
Just
interesting.
yes, very little things. Oh, you look very elegant, or you look smart, or I like your new
Yeah,
haircut. We kind of forget about it, but it's
yeah.
yes, it's very important for. for men as
I
well.
like that tip. So before we wrap up, Mila, I'd like to just dive into one bit that you touched upon a little bit, and I think it really is the crux of the matter, is how do you know what is a red flag
Mm,
versus what is something that you're going to just get used to and that's just
mm,
compromise that any relationship requires. You're never going to find someone who's exactly
mm,
perfectly the way you want them to be. So that's the difficulty is this a red flag, something that's going to ultimately
mm,
lead to the end of this relationship? Or is this something that I can learn
mm,
to live with and that we're going to get used
mm,
to? Do you have any tips
mm.
around that?
Of course, and some of them will be very individual because, as they say, one woman's trash isn't a woman's treasure, and vice versa. So, when you know your personal partner qualities, preferred partner qualities, and personal deal breakers,
Yeah.
because they're not the same for different people. So, first is knowing your personal preferences.
Mhm.
In terms of the more generic one, trust. Trust is huge in any
Yeah.
relationship, and
Yeah.
it's the only thing that men and women agree on 100% and close to 100%. Both men and women put trust in a relationship
Hmm.
at the top of
Interesting.
all
Okay.
requirements. And trust develops over time, of course, and it develops differently in different relationships. But when you're dating someone new, or you're in a new relationship, look for signs. Is the person reliable? And do they always do what they said they would do?
Okay.
Except some special circumstances, which always happen. Um, is their behavior consistent? Meaning, in the moment of anger, are they usually consistent with that behavior? Or in the times of love and passion, is that also expressed consistently? Which means we see that person for what they really are.
Yeah.
Um, of course, it takes time, and that's why I always advise slow dating and not making any rush decisions
Yeah.
during those early months of passion when we have the rose-tinted glasses.
Hmm.
You will learn over time. You will notice any discrepancies in what your partner is telling you or in their behavior. So if you see that potentially trust can't develop in this relationship, that's a huge red flag.
Yes, I would think so.
And sharing things, disclosing some personal information, some feelings, um, is also important component of trust.
Yes.
So although we all know men just don't share as much as women do initially, um, over time, especially when we disclose certain personal information first,
Hmm.
we expect a person who is committed to a relationship will start opening up to you. And this reciprocal sharing of intimate personal
Hmm.
information is a good sign
Yeah.
that the relationship is healthy, that
Yeah.
there
The
is trust in the
vulnerability
relation.
shows trust because you're showing
Yeah,
you're showing your weaker side.
you're showing your weaker side, exactly. So it's not immediate, but it's important to look out for these signs over time. The second important point is conflict,
Hmm.
how people handle conflict.
Yes. That's a big one.
Be yes, because conflict itself is not a negative concept.
Hmm.
All couples have disagreements,
Hmm.
and in fact, it's healthy to have these discussions and debates and disagreements.
Yeah.
In our long-term study, in fact, it's been found that couples who reported no arguments were exactly the couples who split within a few
Ha.
years
Interesting. Yeah.
because because it's impossible not to have any disagreements and
Yeah.
conflicts. And if they do not occur, if they don't happen, that means that one of the couple or both of them are not being honest, are
Hmm.
not being open. If they don't like something, they brush it under the carpet. They don't share their true feelings, and therefore any problems in the relationship just never get voiced or discussed.
Yeah, they can get fixed as a result.
Yes. So
Yeah,
this just leads to resentment
yeah,
inevitably. So having some conflict is not a sign of relationship trouble,
yeah.
but how we handle conflict is very important.
I
And of
agree.
course, handling conflict in a destructive way is a really significant red flag.
Yeah,
And if you are the one shouting, screaming, slamming doors, then it's time to take a look in the mirror and say, right, I might be the problem.
yeah.
So it's okay to have disagreements. We just need to approach them um, fairly
Hmm.
and in a calm way. So if we can feel that there's an argument coming up, it's best probably to calm down and say, may I just take half an hour or go for a walk and calm down so that debate doesn't happen in the worst possible time
Yeah.
when you're feeling very, very strongly and when you're worked up. So there, obviously, and I'm sure you know quite a few techniques on how to calm the situation, how to
Yeah, I mean, conflict is a big one, isn't it, in
a big
divorce?
one in
And a lot
divorce.
of the
Yeah.
time, the conflict that occurs during the divorce is the same type of conflict that's happened during the marriage,
Mm,
and the couple still having the same argument on a
mm,
different topic, but the same dynamic in their argument. And so, learning how to manage that conflict during the relationship I would imagine, help prevent the divorce to start with. But certainly during divorce, a lot of the
mm.
work I do with them is helping them to build those
Yeah.
skills to
Yeah.
manage the conflict, because it's a time where they're making a lot of big decisions for their
Mm.
future, and actually they need to be able to speak to each other and to communicate. But it is a shame it hasn't happened earlier because it might have saved the relationship.
Absolutely. But they don't teach this at school.
No.
Well, maybe they do now, but certainly didn't before. So whenever we have a disagreement, um, try to, instead of starting your sentence with you,
Hmm.
which is immediately a pointing finger,
Yeah.
it's best to wrap it up in a phrase like, um, when you do X,
Hmm.
it really confuses me or it makes me
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
upset, sad.
Yeah.
What can we do about it? Can we
Mhm.
discuss? So there's a number of techniques. So when either you or your partner or date handle conflict in a destructive way, that's a very dangerous situation. It's
Yeah.
one of the key signs that relationship will probably suffer in the long run. And finally, the very big one is what we discussed earlier, key life values.
Yeah.
Um, Continue checking in with yourself and with your partner and see if those key life values are aligned. Maybe not all of them, maybe not six of them, but
Yeah.
at least the top three, which are important
Okay.
to you and to your
Yeah.
partner. And it's worth re-evaluating these over um, over the course of time because people change.
They do. Yeah. And that's when people
Um,
grow apart, actually. They might have
and
started off
sometimes
with
they
the same
do, yeah.
values, but
Mm. So you may find that um, yes, your key life values changed and your partner's hasn't, and vice versa.
mhm,
But it also happens. People are not, the evolution is really harsh and it's all about reproduction.
yeah.
So in evolutionary terms, people were not designed to coexist in this bliss.
Yeah.
Um, we created the best way we can.
Yeah.
So divorce is not a failure. We can have multiple happy relationships over the course of our life.
Yeah.
It's one of the chapters, definitely. In fact, there is a lot of modern research which demonstrates that the idea of lifelong marriage, which we kind of really idealize
Yeah.
in this culture, it it only came about a few thousand years ago, and it was for economic reasons.
Uh-huh. And
Because
very few species of animals have that kind of model, actually, which is quite
and
interesting.
early hominids did not have that model, and we
Yeah.
can tell that with confidence looking at some kind of hunter-gatherer societies. It's when people became settlers and
Hmm.
they started settling down linked to a plot of land in those agrarian societies. Then, first of all, women lost their independence
Hmm.
because they were tied to a home. And
Yeah.
secondly, it was then very difficult for people to leave because all their
Yeah.
livelihood was in that plot of land
That's
and
true.
work in that plot of land. So in all the millions of years before that, people would form a relationship, have a child together,
Hmm.
and when that child would reach age of about 3 or 4, they would be then taken into care of the village, the
Yeah.
community, and quite often, men and women would go and form new couples.
Ah, interesting.
That's why
Yeah.
there is still in every society there's a peak of divorces at about 4 years
Interesting.
since
Okay.
marriage.
It's linked to
So
that cycle.
yeah, so this research is fascinating, and it shows, it explains all the struggles and patterns we have. Um, so yes, very
That's
interesting.
brilliant. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's such
Mhm.
interesting research and insights really into how our
Mhm.
brains work, how our society has influenced us as well. So
It
it's been
has.
really helpful. Just before we wrap up, Mila, then can you
Mhm.
share how people can contact you and what the best way of getting in touch might be?
Oh yes, of course. So my website is single hyphen to hyphen couple.com,
Okay.
and my email is Mila at single hyphen to hyphen couple.com.
Mhm.
And we are on, I'm on LinkedIn, Mila Smith, Facebook and Instagram, single to couple. And I'd be delighted to help anyone at any point on their journey. Thank you very
Brilliant.
much.
Thank you for coming. And if anyone wants to reach out to Mila, feel free to drop her a message and she can explain a bit more about how you can help that specific person in their specific situation. Thanks so much,
Thank you.
Mila.
Thank you, Chloe. It's been a pleasure.